Joe, what do you seek from this never-ending battle? Joe, who are you fighting for?
In the year 2000, production began on a brand new Cyborg 009 anime. In 2003, that series aired on Cartoon Network, introducing many Western fans to the series for the first time. But for Japan, this would be the third TV anime. The purpose of creating another series, despite having 2 series and 2 feature films come before it, was to retell the story with updated animation while keeping the characters true to the author's original intention. With the 2 previous films and series, Toei Studios took liberties with the story and characters, most notably in the 60s rendition, where, against Ishinomori's wishes, 007 was portrayed as a baby in order to make the show more appealing to young children. This new adaptation was a chance to tell the story as Shotaro Ishinomori originally intended it, and to introduce a new generation of manga readers to the adventures of Cyborg 009. Back in 1968, Ishinomori, then known as Shotaro Ishimori, founded Ishimori Productions, a company he used to produce TV anime and live-action tokusatsu series based off his works. It's important to know that to this day, Ishinomori holds the Guinness World Record for the most comics published by a single person, and is credited with creating many of Japan's most well-known superheroes, including Cyborg 009, Kamen Rider, Super Sentai, Robocon, Android Kakaider, and many more. In 2004, less than a year after Cyborg 009 aired on Cartoon Network, an offshoot of Ishimori Productions was formed, called Ishimori Entertainment. The purpose of this offshoot was to adapt more of Ishinomori's comics into anime, while at the same time licensing them out to American movie producers to adapt them into live-action Hollywood films. Ishimori Entertainment made a deal with American movie producer Michael Uslan. Uslan was a comic book collector, turned writer, turned film producer. His story in itself is pretty interesting. He convinced his college to allow him to teach a credited course on comic books by getting backing from the college's folklore and mythology department and arguing that comic books were just modern-day folktales. In order to draw attention to his course, he then began calling news outlets, posing as a disgruntled taxpayer, arguing that no college should be allowed to teach about comic books, wasting taxpayer money, and suggesting that this might be a communist threat. The attention from the news got Uslan recognized by people in the comic book industry, which was how he managed to get his foot in the door and become a writer at DC Comics.
And I went back to the president of DC Comics who had mentored me into the company, and I said, Sal, I want to buy the rights to Batman. I want to start making dark and serious Batman movies and show the world the true character. He was horrified.
Uslan went on to produce a handful of comic book movies, as well as every Batman movie. If you own a Batman movie on DVD or Blu-ray, look on the back. Michael Uslan's name is on there somewhere. With Uslan signed on to produce the live-action films, Ishimori Entertainment made a list of 31 titles they wanted to adapt. However, there was a bit of a discrepancy, as several of Ishinomori's larger titles had their movie rights owned by Toei Studios. This meant that Ishimori Entertainment were unable to do adaptations of Kamen Rider, Himitsu Sentai Go Ranger, Inazuman, Robot Detective K, and many others. Among the titles chosen for adaptation were 0091, Green Glass, Iron Mask Detective Gen, Don Kiko, and the Skullman. Many of the titles were obscure, even to Japanese manga fans, while being completely obscure to Western audiences. Of the 31 titles chosen to adapt, only 2 of them would see anime adaptations, the first one being 0091 in 2004. Meanwhile, Michael Uslan acquired the film rights to Cyborg 009 and had begun pitching it to several big-name Hollywood studios. In 2005, he announced publicly that he was working on the project and was expecting a theatrical release by 2008. Back in Japan though, the 0091 anime was failing to pull in ratings, and eventually was cancelled after only 13 episodes. This is possibly due to the series having more adult themes than other Ishinomori works, with the first episode of the series having a lesbian sex scene. Because of the mature content, the series had to be put at a later time slot where it didn't garner any attention. There are characters seen silhouetted in the opening and in flashback scenes that never appear in the actual show, suggesting that Ishimori Entertainment was planning to do a second season after the first 13 episodes. Meanwhile, Uslan continued pitching Cyborg 009 to Hollywood studios, but was turned down and told that there wasn't enough interest in the series to warrant the budget needed. Even though its time on Toonami helped spread awareness of the series, it didn't pull in ratings and would go on to cause a bit of controversy with the network. That was because even though 009 premiered new episodes on Toonami, reruns were played on the regular Cartoon Network block. This was because Cartoon Network's standard and practices incorrectly rated the series as TVY7, the same rating as their other big action show at the time, Teen Titans. By episode 3, Cartoon Network was receiving complaints left and right about the amount of violence and language that got past standards and practices, coming to a head in episode 3, where 0010 says, "I'm your brother from hell." In later airings, the line was muted until it was eventually redubbed as "I'm your brother gone bad." This issue was quickly followed up with more backlash on the following episode, where 002 punches his reflection and says, "I don't believe in God." This line also had to be muted and eventually redubbed as "I didn't even trust my parents." The controversy became such a hassle for Cartoon Network that they dropped the show into a 1:30 a.m. time slot until they reached the end of the series, then never showed it again in reruns. It became apparent to Uslan that the live-action movie just wasn't going to float with the status the series was in. After multiple rejections, Uslan contacted artist Peter Chung, the creator of Aeon Flux, and had him design the cast of Cyborg 009 in his own style. Pre-production began in 2008, with Chung in charge of the story and art. Uslan then went back to the Hollywood studios and began pitching an American animated feature movie, but these two were unsuccessful. In 2007, Ishimori Productions gave Studio Bones the rights to adapt the Skullman into an anime. The adaptation took elements from the original comic and merged them with elements from Cyborg 009, Inazuman, Kamen Rider, and other Ishinomori comics as a tribute to his life's work. With that, Ishimori Entertainment dissolved, and attempts at making a live-action Cyborg 009 movie were dropped. In 2009, Nikkei News reported that Ishimori Productions worked out an agreement with an unnamed Hollywood studio and would once again attempt a live-action Cyborg 009 movie. Michael Uslan and his company Comic Book Movies were no longer involved at this point, and Ishimori Productions went silent on the topic until 2012, when they announced an American-produced Cyborg 009 graphic novel in collaboration with Archaia Entertainment. The graphic novel was written by comic book writer F.J. DeSanto, and it was also revealed that DeSanto had been put in charge of penning the screenplay for the new movie. The graphic novel makes slight alterations to the story and characters. This was possibly done to mirror the screenplay that DeSanto was working on. Character designs were altered to appear more realistic, and the Black Ghost, renamed Sakar, a broken translation of the name Skull, was portrayed as a human until later in the story where he was made into a cyborg. This may have been done to make the character more in line with a standard comic book movie villain. The graphic novel also has references to other Ishinomori series, mentioning Foundation X from Kamen Rider Double as one of the Black Ghost's main supporters. There's also a scene where Joe goes to Japan, and we can see Japanese text in the background that reads, "Who is the Skullman?" Akira Onodera, the CEO of Ishimori Productions and son of Shotaro Ishinomori, said that his vision was for a series of movies where Ishinomori characters coexisted, which he called Ishinomori's World, a concept we now refer to as the cinematic universe. DeSanto stated that his Easter egg was meant to foreshadow the next graphic novel he would be working on. However, due to lack of interest, the series was discontinued. At this point, the film and graphic novel series were stalled due to what Ishimori Productions refer to as cultural issues, most likely referring to the low sales of Ishinomori properties in the US. As time goes on, you'd think that these series would fade from the minds of Western audiences. But on the contrary, as time goes on, interest in the works of Shotaro Ishinomori has only grown. Cyborg 009 has maintained a huge Western fanbase that's interestingly split almost equally between men and women. Since its return in the 2000s, the Kamen Rider fanbase has grown to be the biggest it's ever been, and with the advent of the internet, the series has spawned a worldwide fandom. Kikaider is so popular in Hawaii that they play the theme at sporting events, and frequently have people in costumes appear at malls to take pictures with kids. They even fly out the original cast of the Tokusatsu to Honolulu to sign autographs.
The ones heading out to the parking lot here is for free autographs with Jiro, the original Jiro, Mr. Ban Daisuke. So that's heading out to the parking lot. Those of you heading out to Macy's, this is for free Kikaida picture taking. Picture taking with Kikaida.
More modern and possibly live-action adaptations of Ishinomori's series may work, and with the rising interest in Ishinomori's protege Go Nagai, it's very possible that in the near future, Ishinomori will have his time to shine.